And I think we're live. Are we live? We are live. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Good to see you. Sorry, I'm just having some messages come up on the screen. Share to groups. Share your live video to your group so more people watch that. I'm sharing. I'm going to share then. Okay. Go for it. So hopefully everyone will get a notification now. Okay, so good evening everybody. Well, lots happened since last week. I think we've had obviously the announcement of the lockdown, and we also had the US elections, which obviously there's no outcome for yet, and it's all very, very interesting, and also very, very unsettling, because obviously we just don't know what the outcome of all of this is going to be at the moment. So I think one of the most important messages really is to kind of be kind to ourselves and not expect too much of ourselves. So it's really hard to operate in a world where the sands are shifting all the time. Hi Caroline, hi Jem, good to see you, well done for joining, great to see you here. Okay, so everyone who doesn't know me yet, I know we've had some new members in the group this week, which is really nice to see. So if you haven't tuned into one of these before, I'm Claire Jones and I'm a lifestyle coach specialising in weight loss, and I particularly like to help unhappy yo-yo dieters who would like to take control of their weight and lead healthier, happier lives. And I do these sessions every week on a Wednesday at 7 o'clock. This is only the third one, but so far it seems to be going all right. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes, and we have a new topic every week, which is voted on by members of the group. So this week we're going to be talking about routine. Now, obviously, in light of everything that's going on at the moment, I think this is probably a very, very timely topic because obviously feeling sort of quite overwhelmed with everything that's going on, it's very easy to sort of feel anxious and feel on edge and obviously not motivated at all to look after ourselves. But obviously, despite that, it is probably the most important time to be looking after ourselves, and especially obviously with coronavirus and the risks that we're all facing with that. Obviously, the healthier we are, the less of a risk it is to us. So yeah, absolutely vital to be spending time looking after ourselves, and even though we may not feel like it. So obviously this week's topic is very timely indeed, which is obviously all about routine. Now, I'm going to be talking about this obviously mainly in relation to weight loss, but obviously everything that I have to say will obviously have knock-on benefits in every aspect of life in terms of where we might need a bit of extra structure. And as I've said in previous talks, these are my own views based on a combination of my own experience, formal study, informal learning, and working with people. It's just stuff to pick up over the years, which works for me. I'm not necessarily saying that just because it works for me it'll work for you too, and it's about you taking from what I say what you think might work, and obviously everyone's entitled to disagree with anything I might say. That's fine. The world would be a very boring place if we all thought the same things, wouldn't it? So yeah, and obviously what I talk about is really in relation to weight loss and people who are unhappy with being overweight and want to lose weight. It's not about people who are perhaps have got other goals. So that's really sort of just to bear that in mind as I'm talking. So we're going to cover. I didn't get any questions, but the things that had come in when I was asking for topics, it kind of said about routine and the problem with or how to stay in a routine when things change. So those are the things that I'm going to be covering. I'm also going to be, is that Linda? Sorry, I just seen your comment, Linda. Can see what you're saying. Yes, I'm good, thank you. I hope you're well, all right. And hi, Joe. Joe, good to see you too. Excellent. So I'm going to be covering how to get into a good routine first of all, and also about what to do when perhaps spanners get thrown in and or perhaps things change and we kind of lose our way a little bit. So I'm going to cover that, and some of these things you might kind of think, well, yeah, I know that, but what I would say is if you're struggling with routine, is it really about the routine? Maybe, you know, it's about what's stopping you. Are there other things that are getting in the way of you applying some of this? So it might be good to perhaps bear that in mind as I'm going through. And if you sort of feel that you're sort of having any resistance to something, you know, what's going on there for you? Why are you perhaps resisting something that I'm saying? Because actually, if these are things that might help, and there are things that are stopping you from doing them, and perhaps exploring that a bit further for yourself might be useful. So just to get started, why routine is important for anything. Okay, so not just about weight loss, but for anything. I mean, there's lots and lots of good reasons why it's important. And I think it's one of those things that when we're children, we have lots of structure. Our parents put lots of things in place for us. And then we grow up and we become adults, and it's all too easy to sort of suddenly find ourselves in a position where, you know, we're now responsible for our time, and you know, perhaps we don't always use it as the best we possibly could. So it gives us structure, and having a structure also gives us focus. And then obviously what that then enables us to do is to be then more efficient with our time, which then gives us more time for the things that we like to do over the things that we have to do. So so the routine stuff is perhaps more effective in getting us to do things that perhaps we're not so keen on doing, so that we can free up time to do the things we really like to do. Otherwise we end up doing the things we like to do and at the expense of the things we have to do, and then that's when we can find ourselves in a bit of a muddle. It can also help us to form better habits or reduce and eliminate bad ones. So, for example, you know, if you're getting into a good routine with going to the gym, for example, getting into, if that's in your schedule to go to the gym at 9 o'clock, I know we can't obviously now for another month, but, you know, talking about the gym or any form of exercise, you know, if we say we're going to do that at 9 o'clock and our schedule says we're going to do it at 9 o'clock and we do it at 9 o'clock, it's so much easier to get into that habit of doing it at 9 o'clock. Or on a specific day of the week or whatever. Whereas if we're kind of like, well, I'll do it sometime, it's so much easier to let it slide, and then suddenly the day's gone by and you think, oh well, I'll do it tomorrow now. And then you beat yourself up because you didn't do it, and then it just kind of spirals into that sort of negative sort of train of thought. So that's kind of like an external form of accountability as well. If you've got a schedule, so just like as if you were at school, at the school timetable, you know, that told you what classes to go, where to go. You didn't have to think about it, you just did it. So it kind of gives that bit of external accountability. If you don't sort of feel you can trust yourself to do it without that, can be very, very helpful. And obviously if we start getting into a routine with doing things, we start getting into a habit of doing things, we get better at doing those things, so we can do them in less time because we're getting better at them. So if you think about, you know, anyone who's perhaps, you know, a successful sports person or crafts person or something, and, you know, it's practice, isn't it? Or even video games, you know, the more you do something, the better you get at it. And it's the same with routine, and it's the same with things that we put into our routines, is that, you know, the more we do it, the easier it becomes. Whatever we might be putting into the routine, or indeed the routine itself, just following it. And it also helps us to really think about what's important so that we can make sure that we get those things done before anything else. And then it reduces the need for actually sort of making decisions or having to use willpower or having to use discipline, because we are just doing what the schedule tells us to do. So it's yeah, very, very useful. I certainly find it extremely useful. And then of course, once we get into a good habit with having the routine and the things that are in the routine, we get in sort of growing confidence, because we're getting stuff done, and I'm achieving something here. You know, this is great. And for certain things, it can actually save money, because if you are getting into a routine, say, I don't know, if you perhaps batch cooking things at the weekend, then you might find that you can spend less money on the shopping because you're doing it all at once and you're freezing it and things like that. I know some of you do like to do that, so again, that can be helpful. So that's sort of lots of reasons why it's important. And I think the main sort of takeaway from that is that by having a routine, it means that we don't have to think so much about what we're doing and what decisions to make, which is actually, when you're trying to lose weight we're faced with decisions about what to eat and where to eat and who to cook for and all of those sorts of things. If we've got a routine, then we're less likely to make a bad decision or a decision that takes us away from our goals. So it's an important part of our safety net, really. And I know it can sort of perhaps feel a bit of a drag to put one in place. Once the hard work is done, it then becomes a whole lot easier. So I think the number one thing for me is, when thinking about routine, is having a strategy about it. And I have to say, I spent 20 years as a manager, so it might feel a bit sort of management speaky, but one of the things that I learned as a manager was how effective management tools can be in every area of my life. So and having a routine is no different. So the first thing is to really sort of think about what it is actually that you're trying to achieve. What do you need to achieve, daily? What do you need to achieve weekly? Not just about weight or weight management, but also about everything else that you've got going on, because obviously our weight management doesn't exist in a vacuum. We look after it in the context of the rest of our lives. So we can't ignore everything else when thinking about what do we need to do in order to lose or manage our weight. So it's really important to kind of spend time thinking about that. And then following on from what I was talking about last week is make sure it's realistic, because if you think, well, actually, I've got all these things going on and I want to lose X amount of weight in X amount of time, that's great if it fits within your life. But if it doesn't, if it means that other things are going to suffer, how long can you keep that going for before things start falling down? So it's about looking at your life as a whole and see where that fits in, and then how much room you've got to play with in terms of what trade-offs you might need to make. As I said, I talked about that last week. So it's about identifying what, out of all of those things, what are the most important things, and then thinking about what actions do you need to take to make that happen. And that so actually what needs to be in your routine, both on a daily basis and a weekly basis and a monthly basis. And once you've sort of got those things sort of defined for yourself, and you can sort of think about them in the context of your whole life, things start to sort of feel a bit more perhaps organised, and you can start to see, well, actually, in order to make this happen, I need to do X, Y, Z. So thinking about your routine, or how you spend your time at the moment. And if you have a routine, what things help you to stick to that routine, what works well for you, or has worked well in the past when you follow it. I mean, I had a client recently, we were talking about this very subject, and we were sort of exploring tools in terms of sort of structuring time, and she said that it was something she really struggled with, and we started to explore at what point in the past did she feel that she had managed her time well, and it was when she was at school, because she had a school timetable to follow. And that then started a whole train of thought for her, and then she came back to her next appointment really excited that she'd gone away and put together this wonderful schedule, and suddenly she felt that she was managing things so much more easily, and it was a massive breakthrough for her. It really was. What things are hindering you as well? So when you are thinking about your day-to-day routine, and you perhaps I'm sure we all got a rough idea of what we want to achieve each day, but do we actually end up achieving those things? And if we don't, what is it that gets in the way? So where are your weak points? Like, do you get easily distracted, for example? I know I do. I can be in the middle of doing one thing, and then suddenly my attention is caught by something else, and then half an hour later I'm like, oh, but what was I doing? I can't remember. But by having a schedule and referring to my schedule, I can be much more disciplined about that, and not need to get to sort of, it's the butterfly approach, I call it, and just really try to limit that, because that is a big weak point for me. Or do you find it hard to say no to other people? Like, you might be in the middle of doing something, and then someone rings you up or sends you a message, oh, could you just, or can we do, or whatever. And is it possible for at least some of those situations for you to actually say, yes, we can do that, but let's schedule it in, as opposed to let's do it now and then you don't end up doing the things that you needed to do, you know. And perhaps you know, thinking about procrastination. Yes, I've got that list on my list, Caroline. Yeah, do you procrastinate? What is it that you're putting off? Yes, absolutely. I could talk in fact, I think maybe we could do a whole session on procrastination. What do you think? Do you think that would be good, Caroline? Should we do a session on procrastination? I'll take that as a yes. Yeah, so yeah, that is a big one, and there's lots of reasons why people procrastinate. There's I say many reasons. So I think that warrants a session all by itself. So yeah, so are you putting things off? And you know, again, having a schedule can really help with that. Another really important thing to do is to review. You know, it's so easy to say, oh, I haven't got time for this, I haven't got time for that. But actually, there's a calculator on Google. You can go in and say how many seconds, minutes, hours, days are there in a period of time. So in a week, Google tells me there are 10,080 minutes, which is 168 hours. And when we think about, you know, resources, you know, time is the most precious resource. You know, we don't know how much of it we've got left, so we want to spend it in the best possible way that we can. So when thinking about a schedule and a routine, it's about thinking about, are we making the best use of that 168 hours in a week? We choose how we spend it. So by looking at where we're currently spending our time, we can perhaps see where we might be able to make some small changes that could potentially make quite a big difference. So it's perhaps then looking at what space do you need to create within that 168 hours for you to make those actions that you've identified actually happen. So are there things that maybe you could do a bit less of that are perhaps taking up too much of your time at the moment, more time than you would like? And there may be a few sort of feelings of resistance around sort of, well, yes, but this, and yes, but that. And if you're feeling that sort of yes, but, then this is the time to sort of challenge yourself and say, what am I resisting when I'm thinking about making changes here? Because we've all, as I say, have the choice as to how we spend our time, ultimately. And, you know, obviously we all have responsibilities that we need to fulfill, but that's not 168 hours a week. There is other time within the week. Yes, we obviously need to sleep, but you know, there are more hours in the day than we perhaps allow ourselves to believe. So it's a useful exercise to do this. And then the other thing is about writing things down, because when we have something written down and scheduled, we are far more likely to do it than if we don't write it down, and that is proven in many studies. But I would say, and there's a coach that I have been following for a long time, and one of his favourite sayings is, "What gets scheduled gets done." And I think he took it from somebody else, and you know, it's a very simple but important thing to remember. My only thing I would say to that, though, in addition, is that you have to have a realistic schedule, because it's very well scheduling something, but if you overschedule, then you're no better off than if you didn't schedule at all, in my opinion. So it really comes back to that whole point about being realistic. So is what you're putting in your schedule likely to get done today or this week? And if it's not, then maybe don't put it in, or maybe think about actually what is the most important thing of these things that I know I've got competing priorities, which are the most important that I get done, and make sure they get done first or at that time that they need to be done, and everything else can sort of fit around it. So it's really sort of highlighting those things that are the absolute must-dos. But be flexible, and I think, you know, especially at the moment when things are so tense and so uncertain, we have to be flexible. So, you know, by having a schedule, if you know, and looking at what is realistic as the day goes on, you can be thinking about, well, actually, I'm not going to have time to do all of these things that I've got left. So what has to give? And something can always give. But it's about being sensible and rational and organised about it, as opposed to just getting in a panic about it. It's just taking a step back, deep breaths. What can I move? And there's always something that can be moved. You may not want to move it, but it may be a case of, well, I'm going to have to move it. So, just thinking about, weight loss in particular, and all of those things that you need to do to support your goals. Going back to, I think, probably both of the previous sessions where I've sort of talked about the importance of, what's realistic within your life. So, are you doing a program that is realistic in the context of the current demands on your life? And if it's not, then it's about perhaps dialing it down a little bit and accepting that, the weight loss might need to be slower, or maybe right now the important thing is to just keep treading water until you're in a better position where you can actually take the action needed to lose weight. Because it is, there's no point in beating ourselves up and making things harder for ourselves than they need to be. And yes, I get that, most of us, if we're overweight, we don't want to be overweight and we want to do something about it. But it comes back to what's realistic when it comes to routine. Is it realistic to say, right, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, when actually you've really only got half an hour? Half an hour will still be better than not going at all. In terms of trying to stay eating the more healthy things that perhaps might take a bit of extra time to cook. Actually, there's a lot of resources out there for people with busy lives who don't have much time but still are able to produce healthy, low calorie meals at low cost. There's lots and lots of information out there. Batch cooking, as mentioned earlier, I know some of you do that, is, again, it's if you're scheduled that in, for once a week, then that's it, your meals are all planned. So it's about sort of being organised, but not going so far that you put too much pressure on yourself. So again, it just comes back to what's going on for you at the moment, what's realistic, and making sure that you do the things that are the most important. And I've put in the mailing that I sent out yesterday about, certainly for the next few weeks, while we're in this new lockdown, obviously, coming out the other side of it with more weight on and feeling horrible and sluggish and unhealthy is not what any of us want, I'm sure. So it's about what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, for some people, lockdown is going to be a brilliant time to really focus on health and well-being and get fitter and get stronger. And maybe, there's some people out there say, yeah, I want to lose a stone by the end of lockdown. Well, that's great, if that's what fits with their life. If that doesn't fit with your life and you haven't got the mental capacity at the moment to do that, and the mental sort of strength because you're worrying about everything else, then maybe your goal needs to be more around, let's just get through lockdown no worse off. And that's why sort of having these sort of 3 things that maybe you can concentrate on regularly, just 3 small things that you can do that can really safeguard your sort of your physical and mental health through these next few weeks, and then see where you are when you get out the other side of that. But having a routine to make sure those things happen will be helpful. And another thing that I like to say, which I picked up from another coach, is today ain't over until tomorrow is planned. And I really like that, because I think what it does is it focuses our attention on what we need to do next. And the other thing that I really am a big fan of is just concentrating on the day in hand and not trying to look any further than that. I mean, obviously, if you're planning a schedule, you need to have a rough idea of what's going to happen in the week. But in terms of where your attention is focused and your efforts are focused, should be literally just in the steps in front of you, what you're going to do next and what you're going to do that day, rather than trying to think, what am I going to do next week? What am I going to do at the end of the week? because the problem with that is that if our focus is too diluted, we end up not doing anything particularly well. Whereas if we're really focused on what's in front of us, we're much more likely to stay motivated. We're much more likely to stay focused and get it done. So by looking at the next day, as we go, going to bed, to think, right, okay, so what have I got in store for tomorrow? Okay, and then you can sort of, make a mental note of what you need to do when you get up, and then you haven't got to worry about it so much when you get up in the morning. What am I going to do today? Because it's all sorted, and you just then follow that schedule or follow that routine that you set for yourself, and don't try and do everything at once, which I sometimes do. I'm guilty of that. And I have to sort of take a few deep breaths, take a step back and say, right, what's most important right now? Start with that. So, and when it comes to actually putting a routine in place, perhaps just start with the things that are going to be the easiest to do, and then get into the habit of doing those before you start adding in extra layers, because you don't want to go from having perhaps not much structure to then being super structured, and then there's no room for any flexibility, there's no room for any fun or spontaneity, and you need to have a balance between the two, really, I think, in order to be effective with this. So when it comes to getting challenged, of course, so like, you've got this nice routine in place and everything's going hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden everything changes and it's like, oh crikey, what are we going to do? Or something comes along that you weren't expecting, and then you've got to try and manage it. But I think one of the things that's really important to do here is to perhaps, if you're finding that you're getting derailed by these things, you're getting derailed by them regularly, is to perhaps revisit your motivation for what it is when it comes to, if we're talking about losing weight here or managing our weight, these things keep cropping up and they keep getting in the way. Then really looking at your motivation is helpful, and your commitment to the process is helpful, because it will really focus your attention, so that you're paying attention to actually what it is that you want. And quite often when we get derailed, there is a part of us that is easier just to go along with it, whereas when you're really tapped into your motivation, it's easier to say no, it's easier to resist, it's easier to do what is ultimately more important in the long term, as opposed to what's really important right now, which may or may not be in line with your goals. If it's things that are coming, then obviously planning ahead is very useful. And there is that saying of fail to plan, plan to fail. Because if we don't plan ahead for things that are happening, then we are then having to make decisions on the hop. We are then having to, rush into things, and therefore we may not always make the decisions that are ultimately in line with what it is that we're trying to achieve. Obviously, revisit your schedule. Does it need to be revamped? Perhaps follow the steps that I've already outlined, and perhaps if things haven't gone to plan, it's perhaps we're looking at, well, what happened there? Why didn't it go to plan? What can I do next time to make sure that I don't fall down that mistake again? I don't like to use the word mistake, but I think it was all learning opportunities. Has anybody, tell me in the comments, has anybody heard of the autobiography in 5 short chapters? Tell me if you've heard it. Anybody? Maybe there's a delay, I don't know. Anyway, I will share it at the end of this. I'll put a picture up on the in the group. But basically, it's about learning from where we've gone wrong before. So it's about, I walk down the street and I fall into a hole, and then each time we go down the street, something changes until eventually we go down a new street, and that's all about how we learn from when things don't go to plan. So that is it's a nice little story. And obviously, if you are finding resistance to things that you're trying to do, it's like exploring what's going on there, because chances are it will be because you want 2 different things at the same time. So it's about working out which of those things is more important to you. And if you're coming down on the side of what's taking you away from your goals, then that's when you need to look again at your motivation. Why are you wanting to do this? Why are you wanting to lose weight? Because as I said last week, we do want our cake and eat it. Sorry, I mentioned cake again. But yeah, we do want to have as much food as we like, but we also want to be a healthy weight, and there has to be a compromise because we can't have both. So that's where resistance might be coming in. And if it does all go a bit pear-shaped, well, whatever you do, don't beat yourself up about it. Just draw a line under it and just think, well, okay, so that didn't go so well, so I've learned from that, I'm going to do it differently next time. And don't expect perfection. You know, I think we're all far too hard on ourselves, and I think especially at the moment, it's important not to be expecting perfection. So I like to live by the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, where, you know, 80% of the time I'm kind of toeing the line with myself, and 20% of the time I've got a bit of room for flexibility and a bit of you know, perhaps, you know, tripping up a little bit, but I've learned not to beat myself up about it anymore, because it's not worth it. It really isn't. It's just, you know, reset, start again, and then, you know, really looking at what I can do to make sure it doesn't happen again. You know, I mean, one of my favourite things to do is to obviously, I like, you know, certain foods that will keep in the cupboard, and it's also all too easy to just kind of get in the habit of having a bit too much. So I know when I started to feel myself slipping, I think, right, I just don't buy it. If I don't buy it, then I can't have it, and then it's not a problem. So, and we've all got our own sort of like little weaknesses where we know we have to be extra careful. Mine happens to be salted caramel cake. But yeah, so I'm not buying it at the moment because I do rather like it. And if I don't buy it, then I can't eat too much of it. And then there'll come a time where I want to have some, and that's okay. And I'll go out and buy some. But I just can't be buying it all the time. That's the thing. That's the deal I'm making with myself. Another sort of final point on this really is to just say, you know, don't try multitask, because what that does is it dilutes our focus and it just invites trouble. So really try and focus on whatever it is that you're doing at the time, and try not to get sort of too distracted. So there are some tools, lots and lots of tools out there that can help with routine. I mean, you know, if you go into any stationery store, if you go onto, you know, online, there's calendars, diaries, schedulers, planners, various apps. There's all sorts of things that can help, and there's a reason for that, because they're helpful. You know, so it's about picking the right things for you, and having a go. I mean, one of the things that I find keeps me absolutely on the straight and narrow is my calendar. It's electronic, and it can I can have numerous different colour codings. So I can have one calendar for my home stuff, one calendar for my work stuff, one calendar for client stuff, one calendar for studying, one calendar for my my gym, one calendar for running, and they're all different colours. And then I know, I can see at a glance, you know, what I've got coming up, and I can literally just sort of work through it. And I get all the reminders that telling me, oh, right, you know, I've got one coming up right now, actually, that tells me I've got something at 8 o'clock tonight. So so I'll be doing that at 8 o'clock, which is great, and it's saved my life on quite a few occasions. I can tell you where I've kind of forgotten I was supposed to be doing something, and I get the reminder, like, oh yeah, I've got to do that. So, and there's something called the Pomodoro technique, which is a particular sort of time management technique, and it's especially good for people who procrastinate, because you can set it for certain times for doing particular tasks, and the idea being that, right, okay, you set the timer, and then you do that task for that length of time. Could be 5 minutes, could be 25 minutes, or anything in between. And the idea is that you make a deal with yourself. I'm not going to stop doing this until the alarm sounds, and then you can move on to the next thing. I find that really helpful, because it stops me from going on my phone, it stops me from going up and getting a cup of tea, it stops me from doing all of those things that I do to procrastinate before I actually get on with doing anything. So I find the Pomodoro technique very useful, and there's lots of apps you can get with that technique on. Another thing that I find useful is a consistency framework. So that's basically, I make a list of things that I want to achieve each day, and then I can tick it off each day when I've done them, and then I can start to see where am I not getting things done, and then I know that I can then start focusing on them a bit more, because they're perhaps getting a bit neglected. So if I'm sort of doing my scheduling and I'm thinking I'm not not paying enough attention to a certain area, then I can really see where the gap is, and I can start to fill that gap by prioritising it the next day, which I find is really helpful. Reward charts can be quite helpful. I know, yes, you know, even for grown-ups, I think they can be different kinds of rewards, obviously, compared to what you might use for children, but they are pretty good. So, you know, if you know that, you know, you stuck to your schedule, or you stuck to your routine, and you've achieved certain things, then you know, why not reward yourself with something? You know, obviously, ideally not food if you're trying to lose weight, or you know, but you know, there's all sorts of things, and that's a whole other session as well that we could talk about. Having an accountability buddy is helpful, and having a support group like, you know, this group that we're in can also be very helpful. As they setting reminders that I've mentioned before, and also perhaps enlisting the help of those around you. So if you know that you struggle with the routine, perhaps just tell those people that you know, that you spend time with, that you live with, or you know, that you work with, that you know, can they perhaps help you to stick to it. You know, so if you know that you find it hard to say no to things, if you know that you get easily interrupted and distracted, you perhaps just say, look, you know, I'm really trying to work hard on getting focused at the moment, so can you just bear that in mind, and perhaps, you know, in terms of how they communicate with you and what they expect from you. So that's you know, communication is helpful. So that's pretty much it on routine. I could talk for hours on this sort of stuff, but I hope that's sort of like the main points that are probably, hopefully, the most helpful. Do let me know if they are or not, and if you've got any other questions on it. And I'll share a few links of some of the tools that I've mentioned, so that you can perhaps have a try of a few things. So we've kind of gone over again. I just wanted to mention very, very briefly before I finish is that obviously said I was going to talk about my new membership. I mentioned last week that I was going to be launching a new monthly membership this month. So it is now up and running, but I wanted to give a little bit of a special offer to this group and also to my subscribers on my mailing list, because I recognise that obviously lockdown is going to be challenging again. I know it's not quite as strict as the last one, but it is still going to be quite unsettling for many of us, and I wanted to see what I could do to help. So I'm actually offering for everyone in this group, I'm offering free membership of my monthly membership up till the 1st of December. So the benefits that you will get for that is, rather than me talking at you for half an hour or so, there'll actually be interactive group coaching sessions. So you'll have access to those up until the end of the month. They'll be weekly as well, probably slightly longer, depending on how long these should be, about half an hour, but it'll be perhaps a bit longer, about 45 minutes. I'm also going to be offering the option of personal question and answer sessions with me. So that'll be by email. So if anybody has got any sort of, you know, weight loss advice queries that they want to just sort of ask me something, they can email me and I'll give you a personal answer on that. And I'm going to sort of set up like a bit of a clinic in terms of, like, you know, I'll answer your emails between these times, so you know when you can submit them by, and then when you can expect an answer by. Obviously there will be access to the recordings of the previous group sessions. Obviously you've got the access to these sessions, but you'll also have access to the group sessions up to the end of the month, once we've got them going, obviously. I'm going to be starting to do more blog writing, and I want to be able to make sure that I'm writing about the things that you want to know about, so I'm going to be tailoring them to what people want to know. And obviously, in order to sort of run the membership, there's another Facebook group that I've set up specifically for the members, which is called YOLLAs. So we did a little bit of a poll a while back about a name, and YOLLAs, as in YourOneLifers, Facebook group. So that is now in place. So I will share the link for that. And there's also going to be monthly challenges, but that's not going to start until the actual paid thing, I think, because I'm not sure that I'm sort of ready for running them yet. If I am, I'll start it early, but I'm kind of thinking that's going to be December. And then once it is up and running properly in December with the paying, when it starts to become sort of a paid system. I mean, it's a paid system for anyone who's not a member of this group already, but for you it will all be free for the first month. But once it's all sort of set up properly, then there will be discounts, and there is going to be a free gift, but as I say, that is only going to be for paying members. Can't really sort of afford to offer that myself at the moment, much as I would like to. And there will also be a buddy system in place, so that, you know, which is entirely voluntary, but it will be a case of, you know, if someone wants a little bit of hand holding, if somebody wants a little bit of support, then I can match people up in the group under a sort of like confidential buddy system, so that people can get a little bit of extra support and accountability with each other, which can work very well. So and there will be a 10% discount on my courses and my webinars for any paying members as well. So I really want to give you the opportunity to try it for free and get the benefits from it during lockdown. And then after that, obviously, you know, if you decide you want to stay, great. And then obviously I can tell you how you can pay, or you can just decide, actually, no, this isn't for me. And then you can just tell me and I can just take you out of the group, or you can remove yourself from the group. It's, you know, it's no hard feelings. But I really do think that, you know, it's going to be quite helpful. I hope so anyway, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. So I just wanted to let you all know that is going to be a benefit for you for the next few weeks until 1st of December. So on that note, I'm going to end it now. In terms of next week, rather than having the live session, I'm going to do the group in place of next week. Once the membership is up and running for and we, you know, I go back to having the 2 groups, then I'll still be doing the Facebook Lives as well as the group coaching. But as it's the same people at the moment for the next few weeks, I'm just going to keep it as one, otherwise it's going to get a bit confusing. So next week will be a group coaching session, so I'm going to be doing it on Zoom rather than, or I might do this, there's a Facebook rooms thing, isn't there, so I might do it on that. But whatever it is, it's going to be the interactive version as opposed to me just sitting and talking at you for 45 minutes or whatever. So you can get involved and we can have some discussion going on if you want to, or you can just sit and watch and listen, that's fine. But I just want to have that sort of interactive element so that you can get more out of it and ask questions in real time, and see what you think. So in terms of next week's topic, I'm going to open a poll up after a bit later on tonight, and then obviously you have the chance to vote on that, and then we'll have that will be decided on Sunday, and then I'll announce it on Monday morning, and then we'll obviously I'll obviously let you know the details for the session. So it'll be 7 o'clock next Wednesday, but it'll be a group interactive session rather than me just talking at you. So have a good evening, everybody, and again, try not to put too much pressure on yourselves, please. It's not the right time to be doing that. We need to be looking after ourselves and looking after each other, and just take it one day at a time. All right, bye for now.